So the book in French is called, it's this book, Pour que chantent les salamandres. If we would translate it into English, it would be, the song of salamanders, or so salamanders will sing. But this book is translated into English under another title, which is Solstice and Other Poems. The reason is that there are two parts. The first one is a long poem called Solstice, the Call of Janus. In French, Le Brame de Janus. In Occitan, Le Brame de Janus. This long poem is dedicated to the summer solstice. You know, the longest day of the year. And this long poem is written in four movements, which are the St. John's Eve day, evening, night, and the first summer dawn. It's hard to talk about what we write, you know, but in few words, in this poem, as we enter the night and, you know, to celebrate the solstice in Europe and in a lot of other places all over the world, we do big fires, big stakes. So as we enter into darkness, into night, the frontiers between the wild animals, the tamed animals, and what I think is the human animal, those frontiers, they become more and more, they disappear, you know. And the second part of the book is composed of several poems. So the Occitan language is the historical and the original language spoken in the half south of France. It's also spoken a little bit in Spain, in Val d'Aran, and in Italy, in Piemonte. So it's a language, it's not a dialect. It's a Latin language, which is a brother and sister with Catalan, because it gets separated later than the other Latin languages. And it is really a very central Mediterranean Latin language, because we have Ibero-Romanic roots, Gallo-Romanic and Italo-Romanic, so it's really central as a language. I am from that region where Occitan is not anymore an everyday life language. It's spoken almost by old people, and then it's spoken by people who choose to learn it. So now it is strange, because for a long time it was considered as a very rural, rustic language for sociologic reason. And now it is spoken by academics. I am an academic too. I did a PhD thesis about the Occitan drama from the 17th century. And when I was teaching at university, my lessons were in Occitan, not in French. So it's spoken by some academics, some artists, musicians, and what we would call them Occitanists, you know, the militants of the language. But yeah, that's the actual situation. I write bilingually because when I began writing poetry, I began in Occitan. What happened is that when I tried to translate it into French, which is my mother language, and which everybody can understand, while few people can really understand Occitan, when I tried to translate it into French, it was bad. So that was a problem, and I decided to find a solution. And I tried to write in the main time in Occitan and French. and it works very well. So now there is not any original language. It's a bilingual process of writing, and I cannot say if that verse has been first thought in Occitan or French, and it's a dialogue between both, and it's very interesting as a poet because I have two tools, you know, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work, I have to choose if I keep the first image or if I create a new one, if I go deeper, and if I want to keep the first idea I had, so I have to write something slightly different in the other language that will work. So that's a dialogue. The same thing, it's the same poem. It's just that when I'm writing, in the very moment of the writing, I go from one language to the other. But then you have, of course, you have a full poem in Occitan and a full poem in French. But they are like the two faces of a same body. They are very different because even if they are both Latin languages, Occitan is a tonical language, while French is not tonical. So the way you accentuate words is totally different. And phonetically, really the sounds of the two languages are very different. Occitan is more South Mediterranean in its sounds, yeah. But as I write, that's why I choose this process. As I write in both languages at the same time, I really succeed to balance it. And you know, I'm doing a tour of readings here in India, and I was very happy because some people told me that it's balanced, you know, between the both languages. And that's what I'm looking for. You know, when I write a poem, I don't know what, you know, I don't choose the subject, but if you read the collection, what the main themes are, I would say, a deep relationship to nature, because I grew up in nature, in the country, and so the natural element is very important. It can be stones, it can be animals, or you know, everything. Also, a kind of pagan mysticism is present. There is some influence of the Greek mythology. It's sometimes there. And now it is not published yet because I'm writing it, but I'm writing a dialogue between Ulysses and, a man called Ulysses and a woman with no name. And so this is between poetry and drama, but I'm writing it. So, yeah. À l'ouro del solstici, lo peuple vestit de fusto, a tiro di saramo da céu sem caro. Luri barrellaire carecho discas rival sus remembres de neu. Los aubres de ma selvo, enruguechata al premier jour de l'estiu. Los hommes de la billo, andicca cos la rubilio e che ven del Japon. Mas elle sabun pas que los aubres daquero cumbo, di nos secret de los razigos, alison de peiros vivos, que se metu a sumia que l'auro e la pluecho, las prendran nuso sul bar à l'ouro del solstice. À l'heure du solstice, le peuple vêtu de bois attire dans sa ramure des oiseaux sans visage. Le ruisseau vagabond charrie jusqu'au rivage ses souvenirs de neige. Les arbres de ma forêt ont rougi au premier jour de l'été. Les hommes de la ville ont dit que c'est la rouille et qu'elle vient du Japon. Mais eux ne savent pas que les arbres de cette combe, dans le secret de leurs racines, caressent des pierres vives qui se prennent à rêver que le vent et la pluie les prendront nus sur la glaise à l'heure du solstice. At the solstice hour, people dressed in wood lure into their leafage birds without faces. The wandering stream drags towards the shores its memories of snow. My sylvan trees have reddened with summer's first day. The man from the town said that was rust blown in from Japan. But they don't know that the trees in this comb, in their deepest secret roots, stroke living stones that start to dream that the wind and the rain will take them naked and clay at the solstice hour. You know, it's hard to say in English the idea I have, but for me, poetry is a kind of, is a language that you can express into many idioms, you know? In French, we would say que c'est un langage que l'on peut traduire dans toutes les langues. That's what we would say into French. Occitan language is the language of the medieval poets called the troubadours, which have influenced all Europe and south and north of Europe, because Richard Coeur de Lion, the English king, was writing into Occitan. What we call the Galaico-Portuguese lyric is inspired by the troubadour. And at that time, there were men and women poets. The men were called troubadours and the women troubairites. And this is medieval time. And we called, the poems were called kansu, which means song. That was the word for poem, because they were sung, those poems. And after that, there is a huge, what we call Baroque Renaissance. It's a movement between the 16th and 17th century. We have a lot of dramas, a lot of poetry. And I go fast. In the 19th century, we have a Nobel Prize, Frédéric Mistral, who wrote poetry into Occitan, into the dialect called Provençal. My dialect is called Languedocian. Because Occitan has never been the language of any state. So it remained pluridialectal. We have the Gascon, the Languedocian, the Provençal, and what we call the North Occitan. And this is a richness. And of course, we understand all dialect.